so many great sessions ranging from technology to enable the American dream to civics education, the launch of our TopX toolkit, and new models for scaling government innovation. To wrap up today's packed agenda, we could not be more thrilled to host a fireside chat with the Census Bureau's Deputy Director and Chief Operating Officer, Ron Jarman. In his role, Dr. Jarman serves as an advocate and steward for the importance of innovation and technology in the work that the Census Bureau accomplishes. He'll be speaking today on how the Census Bureau has led innovation throughout its history, the mission ahead for the data community, and how the unknown future of technology will shape the censuses of 2030 and beyond. And we're extremely excited to share that Ron will be joined by Pat Bajari, VP and Chief Economist of Amazon Core AI, whose groundbreaking work is at the forefront of technology development and data-driven solutions. We're so thrilled to host this conversation, and thank you so much to both of you for being here. Welcome, and we will now turn it over to you.
Thanks, Drew.
Great, thank you. First of all, Ron, nice to see you again, and thanks everybody for joining today. So Ron, I was skimming over the program and looking at some of the prior sessions, and I have to say that I was really impressed with the work that was going on in TOP, and in particular, the value of collaboration at the intersection of the census industry, not-for-profits,
Yep.
the academy, et cetera.
It is amazing, and I think we've been so lucky to be able to host TOP over the last several years, and I think that one of the things I'm really excited about and proud to see happening is how this is spreading to other agencies with the development of the TopX toolkit and the ability for folks to kind of take this methodology and plant it in their own agency and see how it goes. It's been hugely important for the Census Bureau in a number of ways. I think the key thing is that maybe we've infected the agency with sort of the importance of thinking about what the customer needs, and then user-centered design. I think those two, they don't sound like big things, but statistical agencies are pretty conservative organizations, and a lot of what we do was sort of developed in the middle of the 20th century with a lot of big survey platforms that were meant to solve big government problems, whether it was Great Society programs or for fighting poverty or various types of government programs that we put these surveys out there for, and we kind of kept thinking that was what we were supposed to do. I remember many years ago I was talking to someone from the economics directorate where I sort of started my career at the Census Bureau, and I was talking about something that we should do with some of the data, and she responded to me that the Census Bureau's main customer was the Bureau of Economic Analysis, and the data were primarily for doing national income and product accounting. And I thought, well, that's certainly an important role of the data, but there's all these other things that we can do. So, to think about, who the users are, they've expanded enormously from that sort of original sort of federal needs and the needs of researchers and what have you to, everyday businesses and households use our information. And so, to have the ability to get folks together to sort of, crash on what is the important thing that we're trying to accomplish with some of our measurement programs, and who are we trying to help with better, improved information. And I'll just give you, sort of two big examples here of how this has helped the Census Bureau.
Great.
One is that we've kind of scaled this up to a whole transformation program at the census about thinking about how we're going to do our jobs in the 21st century. So we've taken all these principles and used that to get everybody in the agency involved in this effort. But it really helped us think about how to respond to COVID earlier this year. And so when the virus hit and the first lockdowns were made, obviously huge impact on the economy, and people needed information to understand how it's affecting households and small businesses. And so, we use these tools to work with a range of partners to come up with our pulse surveys. And I think that they've been a huge hit. But again, it comes back to this, that before COVID hit, we sort of generated this innovation model inside the Census Bureau of how to kind of go about this in a way that involved a bunch of people and to come up with a good outcome. So it was really
That's
great
something I'm
that we have
certainly
this.
very sympathetic to. Being in business is always thinking about who your customer is, what are their needs, how are you serving them. What was it about TOP that specifically helped you guys sharpen some of your thinking along those dimensions? Because I think that's important for any organization. You're not serving a real need for somebody, you're generating inefficient cycles.
Well, I think it was a couple things. First of all, it was just that you should be listening to your customers. Okay, I think sometimes big bureaucracies, tend to think they know what they're doing, and you just keep chugging along. So the first thing is just to listen, but then it was kind of how to listen and how to engage people in a conversation of how data and tools come together to solve problems. I think that was it sounds simple, but that really was kind of one of the big things that TOP brought to the Census Bureau was to think about how to go about solving the problem instead of I think sometimes there's a notion that I heard it in some of the earlier sessions today that well, people need this, I'm just going to go build it, right? Well, how are they going to use it, and what problem are they trying to solve with it? And so I think what, like in the pulse surveys, when we're out there working with other agencies and the Fed and stuff, what did you need to, what information do you need to make decisions that are going to go out there and help Americans, cope with the pandemic, and sort of understanding what those needs were really helped us sort of hone the content of the surveys and how we deliver the data and all those sorts of things. So I think it was just a huge help.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit more about the pulse surveys, what they contained, and how you think your customers were able to find those useful?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, one of the critical things about the pandemic environment was, was very, things were happening quickly, especially in the spring, and most data products, are not timely in that sort of scale. So the key thing was to try to find a way to get weekly data out there. And so, there's not administrative records and stuff like that one can rely on to do that sort of stuff. So we had to, kind of put surveys together quickly. And, we weren't the experts on what content these surveys needed. We knew that we had the wherewithal to field the surveys, but some certain economic questions and stuff like that we're probably competent to think about. But working with National Center for Health Statistics, folks at CDC, working with folks at the Fed, Small Business Administration, really about what are the critical needs that these agencies needed to help the public and small businesses cope with the pandemic as best they could. And so I think it was that trying to find ways to get everybody together and then to bring the resources that the Census Bureau is good at to bear on that problem, I think was really useful. And so I think there's just a lot of information about how there's stuff about people's whether they're food insecure or their levels of anxiety and stuff like that are really useful for public health and mental health folks to help folks with the pandemic. We had all sorts of questions on the business surveys about their expected scaling up and scaling down of their employees, whether they were using PPP loans and that sort of stuff. So real tangible things that were helping people deal with the pandemic.
I know one of the things you're really passionate about, Ron, and I'm deeply empathetic towards, is modernizing how we collect data for official statistics and other purposes.
Yeah.
Having data that's timely as well as from different sources could serve a lot of different needs. Can you tell us maybe how TOP has influenced your thinking about that, and just more generally how you're thinking about that within the census?
Well, clearly, so I mean, there's a couple ways. So one is, what are the use cases that people need data to help them solve, real world problems. But then also, then how do you actually accomplish that? And so, I think we've fielded some new products using administrative records over the last few years that are, what we call it, we're still calling them experimental, and they're growing. But one of the really cool ones is called Veterans Employment Outcomes. And so we have labor force data from administrative records, but we link information from the Army about when people are leave the military. We will then link that to the labor force data, and so look at the private sector labor market outcomes for former Army veterans. And we worked a lot with the folks at the Army, and I don't think the top folks were involved in this directly, but this is one of these things where we top kind of infected the rest of the Census Bureau, and it was kind of to get an agreement with the Army to use the data and sort of mash it up and create these new products. What was the problem that the Army was trying to solve, and then what was the problem that people that maybe are considering a career in the military, what kind of questions they want to know about how their path through a military career might impact their subsequent private sector labor market outcomes. And so just the notion that you're getting everybody together and you're trying to solve a set of problems, it's real easy for the Census Bureau. We want to mash all this data together and do a bunch of cool things, and maybe we have some ideas that we want to look at. But at the end of the day, it's really does this help the Army better position folks that are leaving for their careers after the Army? Does it help people, young people that are considering a military career? Does it help them think about what they want to do and how they want to, what training and stuff they need, to be successful afterwards? So I think, this is where it really helps, sort of regular, ordinary people and other government agencies to solve these problems. But it's really using these sort of, the top toolkit, if you will, more broadly in the agency to figure out how to best approach those problems.
So if I think about the data sets in the world, there are lots of different entities holding them. It's fragmented. It's all over the place. What are some of the kind of practical impediments people like you face in terms of building these partnerships and collaborations with the outside? And a follow-up is, if you could solve those impediments, are there things you think you could do that are truly game-changing in terms of, say, how we measure the economy, or just provide better information for policy or understanding our society?
Right, sure. So, I think this is probably one of the big issues that our society and people in general face in the decades to come is to try to figure out the sort of data access issue, and how do you get data wherever it sits into the hands of people who could use it for some value-added purpose. And so lots of data. So the Census Bureau is a data steward, Amazon's a data steward. We all sit on data, and there often are many restrictions about how it can get used. And so, and often, based on, laws or, company policies or what have you. And it's the data steward, is there to safeguard the information and not to make sure it's not misused in some way. And so their natural answer in many cases is no. And so whether it's a lawyer at a government statistical agency or a government administrative agency, like say the IRS or Social Security Administration, or corporations, that sit on lots of information that could be useful for statistical purposes. If the organization doesn't see much value in it, and lawyers often rarely see value, they only see risk. And so how do you convince folks to say yes? And so I think partly this is, there could be a technical aspect to this about how do you engineer, hardware and software systems to share this information securely and all that sort of stuff. And, and we're like other large organizations, we're involved in research in those areas and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, it really is more of a policy problem. And at the end, it's a policy problem because, organizations and individuals that are stewards don't trust the people who might, have some good value added use. And so I think what you see right now is you see a lot of sort of one-off projects where, whether it's an academic or even a government stat agency gets a few sort of token uses of new sources of data for some sort of economic or social measurement program. So you see lots of academics doing projects, and it's probably because, when they were in college, some economist at a university was a roommate with somebody who's running some tech company or something like that, and they can convince them to give them the data. Or the Census Bureau has relationships with a few organizations to get other other data sources to do various things like measure the retail trade sector and stuff like that. But to scale that up, nationwide, to really do statistics in a way that you could really have timely information, very granular information from sort of raw transactions level data in the case of the economic measurement. There is that hope out there, and we know from some work that we're doing methodologically that we could probably do a better job of the statistics would not only just be more timely and more granular, but they would be more accurate for things like, say, price measurement, where the goods coming in and out of the market tend to make the methods that BLS uses perhaps overstate price inflation. And so if you could look at sort of the the churn of goods in the marketplace, more granularly, you might get better price statistics. So there's a huge potential benefit of doing all this. It's just there's a lot of sort of non-technical work, I think, and I think this is where the you can come back to top again, is how do you get a bunch of people together and talk about the use cases in a way that everybody sees the value, and then understands the risks more clearly as well, and sort of find the right balance between access and sort of restrictions of the access to the data. So
data is increasingly living in the cloud. Lots of companies, as well as the public sector, are moving in that direction. From the outside, it strikes me that in some ways helps to facilitate data sharing arrangements, because there's usually a finite number of clouds that these things live on, and there's ways to securely share the components that are needed. But then second, the cloud also facilitates techniques in machine learning and other approaches to looking at data. Are any of these parts of how you all are thinking of data modernization, or any lessons learned through top there?
Yeah, so I think absolutely. So at Census, we're thinking, we're thinking about lots of things, but we already are, sort of starting to move into the cloud. So a lot of our decennial processing occurred in the cloud in a very secure environment. But I think, one of the things that we are looking at is trying to find ways to compute on the data where it sits. So stat agencies typically have been, we go out and get the source data, whether it's from a survey or from an administrative file or something like that, and we bring it in-house, and it's on our servers, and we compute on it. But are there ways where, perhaps if we really are going to start using lots of transaction level data, just the volume of the data and the frequency with which we might want to access it, makes, bringing the data into the house just, not really a feasible notion. So can we compute on the data where it sits? But also from our perspective, can we allow others to compute on our data in a way that's secure, and we can push data out to other organizations, or at least computations of that data out. So, we are doing some experiments on, secure multi-party computing and stuff like that with other colleague stat agencies like the Bureau of Economic Analysis, to see if there are things that where they need a bunch of our data, could they compute on it without having to be inside of our firewall, or us having to release a bunch of data to them just to do some basic calculations. So I think there's lots of promise in that space, but again, this is one of those issues where we're trying to find ways that different organizations that might not always have a reason to be collaborating together, to allow there to be some technical means of accessing data in a way that keeps all the lawyers happy and all that sort of stuff. So I think this is going to be a work for all of us in the years to come, but I think the payoff is there, and we're just going to have to find a way for federal agencies and the private sector and academia and other interested organizations to find ways that wherever the data is sitting, if there's somebody who can make a good case for getting access to it and computing some statistics off of it, that we find a way to do that, whether it's in economic and social measurement milieu of the Census Bureau, or look all the stuff with the pandemic, lots of healthcare stuff. Clearly probably some benefits to making some of that data more available to the right researchers and sort of stakeholders in that area to come up with better outcomes for the public.
Great. I think we're about at time. Any parting thoughts you'd like to leave the conference with?
No, I think, one of the things, if there are folks from other agencies listening out there, and I know many of you have already started, and if you're listening to this, you're probably, I'm singing to the choir, but the notion that a stodgy government agency can fairly easily adopt some of these methods, and I think you'll find that your staff will adopt them eagerly. Not everybody, but there are folks that want to do what's right, improve service for the public, and to innovate. And I think innovation doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be doing something better, and giving people better value than you were giving them before. And so I think there's lots of pretty simple, not expensive ways that you can use these sort of tools to innovate inside your organization, and then take that outside and give better service to the public. So
great. Well, thank you very much, Ron. Nice seeing you again, and great conference.
It was great having you on, Pat. So we'll see you later.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Well, thank you so much to Ron and Pat for your candid insights and discussion on data in the economy, spurring innovation to be able to scale the use of statistics, and for our data to be more timely, granular, and accurate. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you to all of you who are listening today for joining us on day 2 of Demo Week. Today was it was a jam-packed day, and we could not be any happier about the enthusiasm and involvement of each and every one of you. We dove into 4 challenges around the built environment and featured many impressive new tools from this year's sprint participants. We also heard from community experts on the ground that helped shape these products and provided insights on their potential impact as well. We heard from the State Department on how we're able to leverage the Opportunity Project model by using our TopX toolkit and address civics education in our nation. Especially teachers and educators in implementing civics education curriculum in the classroom. So we hope you are able to tune in to our 2 last conversations of the day about the state of innovation ecosystems across government, and of course, our fireside chat just now with top leaders from the Census Bureau and Amazon on data in the economy.
But we still have one more day left of engaging hands-on workshops scheduled for tomorrow, so be sure to tune in. We will be right here at noon Eastern, 12 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. We'll kick the day off with a discussion on technology, humanity, and the collective bridge between the two with Aidan Van Noppen, followed by a panel discussion with veterans on the role that technology can play in fostering positive mental health. After that, we'll be hosting a discussion about data curation with industry experts, followed by multiple concurrent workshops on topics ranging from human-centered design, a masterclass with 3 leading experts, to the role of technology in local government, and a hands-on workshop on the TopX toolkit and how you at federal agencies can leverage that new toolkit to run a tech sprint of your own. It's the perfect way to wrap up Friday, and we will be kicking off the entire day with a special appearance from the Department of Commerce's Secretary Wilbur Ross, and we're so thrilled to host him here tomorrow. So be sure that you go over to the event page on Imamo and check out the sessions slated for tomorrow. Make sure to add them to your personal schedule so that you can get a calendar invite and reminders. And please share what you learned today on social media and post what you're looking forward to tomorrow. There have been so many inspiring sessions and just fascinating conversations with the members of our community that we really encourage you to head over to your social media of choice and post something that you've learned or something you're most excited about using #OpportunityProject. But don't go away. Now join us for an optional virtual networking session and be sure to connect with colleagues from across industry and government. There are so many fascinating people here, and we hope that you'll enjoy having an opportunity to meet one another. Thank you so much, and we will see you here tomorrow.